Good morning and happy Friday. It is April the 23rd, 2021. Let it be known we have a fantastic show lined up for you today. Nika Smith is a professional photographer, speaker, host, consultant, and documentarian with more than 20 years of experience as a genealogist. She has extensive experience in African ancestor genealogy, reverse genealogy, and is an expert in genealogical research in the northern Louisiana area, researching enslaved communities. We're going to talk to Nika Smith this morning. But first, let's bring on our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacy. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we welcome all of our viewers from throughout the United States and actually throughout the Pan-African world who are joining us early each morning. On behalf of the Black Press of America, we welcome all of you.
Yep, and the headlines this morning, Dr. Chavis: police officers stopped and detained two guys riding by on their bicycles, two young black men, apparently because they looked like two other guys they were after. But considering the current climate, it was pretty scary encounter for those bicyclists. The two young men, they looked like minors. They were cruising on the sidewalk in Orlando, Florida, when all of a sudden they came across a few police cruisers that had their lights flashing. The cops tell them to stop, get off the bikes, and to get on the ground. The young man recording asked, "What's going on? Why are we being stopped?" He even asked why the officers have their guns drawn and trained on them. The officers incredibly orders one of them to crawl. And if you get a chance to see this video, you can see how incredulous they were. The partner, the friend, says, "Are you kidding me? You making him crawl?" One cop tells him they're being detained for matching the description. And how many times, Dr. Chavis, have we heard that you matched the description? These two boys, of course, young men, were totally innocent. They had just been shopping at a 7-Eleven and they were headed home on their bicycles. Another incident in which it's rightfully drawn outrage.
Absolutely. Well, racially motivated police brutality is another example of systemic racism in America, and it continues. Even after the verdict of Derek Chauvin for murdering George Floyd, even after the funeral of Dante Wright, even after the shooting in Elizabeth City, the shooting in other parts of the country, and the harassment, walking while black, driving while black, riding a bicycle while black, breathing while black is a hazard in a racist society. And until we rid America of racism, these incidents are going to continue.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, speaking of that incident in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, demonstrators have been out in the streets. They said they will be back today. The shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. Apparently, there was a warrant that was being served. The police were seeking Andrew Brown, and he drove away in his car. Well, as he was driving away, officers opened fire, striking him, killing him. And also the bullets was shot so wildly that they found bullets in other people's homes. And he was unarmed, Andrew Brown, apparently. The police have refused to release the body cam footage. They've said that they won't do so unless the court orders them to do so. The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation is looking into the matter. But as you mentioned, in North Carolina, we have that situation there, Dr. Chavis.
Well, absolutely. Again, the problem of racism, the problem of police brutality against Black Americans and other people of color is not just a state problem in a particular state. It's not a Minnesota problem alone. It's not a North Carolina problem alone. It is a United States of America problem, all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. It's a problem, and we have to work on it. I think that is why everybody's calling now for the passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which has passed the House. It's now in the Senate. And I know President Biden and Vice President Harris are pushing it. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus, I met with many of them several days ago on Capitol Hill. And that's one of the top priorities now, is to get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed.
Yeah, I want to say good morning to our own Bobby Henry down in Florida. I know Bobby's on that story there. Joni King, our executive administrator, Claudette Perry as well, Annette Phillips. Good morning to you all. This morning, Tish K. Bazil is also watching, along with many others. Good morning to you all. Thanks for watching. Dr. Chavis, some Good Friday news. Orrin C. Hudson, who worked as an Alabama state trooper for 7 years, is now the founder of a nonprofit called Be Someone. Based in Atlanta, Georgia, the Academy has recently established a new priority of training Black boys and teens and helping them to navigate the complexities of life. According to blacknews.com, the school will also prioritize training young Black men on how to stay alive during police interactions. His formula, using the chessboard, teaches that for every move that is made, whether it is playing the game or living as a contributing citizen, there is a corresponding positive or negative consequences. When he is not teaching classes in person in Atlanta or online, he is traveling across the U.S. successfully providing his unique, exciting, and engaging curriculum to thousands of young African Americans. To date, he has taught more than 55,000 African Americans. So, Orrin Hudson, we tip our hats to you. Keep up the great work. And also Dr. Chavis, Lanier Ajakai, a real estate developer and investor who is the mastermind behind the largest Black-owned real estate project in the state of Rhode Island. His project, 25 Bow Street, will be a 15,000 square feet state-of-the-art center of excellence in the heart of Providence that will feature 3D Black history exhibits, a new age financial literacy and career center, a world-class multi-purpose function hall, innovative co-working entrepreneurial spaces, and so much more. So a lot of African Americans, we know that the bad side is the police interaction, but we have some brothers and sisters who are doing some great things, Dr. Chavis.
Right. We have to continue to strive for excellence in spite of the context of white supremacy. We have to continue to raise our children, lift up our families, create our businesses. You know, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we represent 230 African-American owned businesses, small businesses, regional businesses. The Black Press, we're 194 years old, the Black Press, Stacy, this year, and we're preparing for our convention, June 23rd through the 26th. It'll be virtual, and we're going to talk about it before the end of the program, but it's a good segue of what you're discussing with our special guests. I'm so excited to have Nika Smith with us, distinguished genealogist, researcher, because we need to link our history. We are high achieving people, and we need to remind ourselves of that. Earlier this week, States, you know, we were with Ebony. Ebony.com is a member of the NMPA, Ebony Magazine, and this is the 75th anniversary of Ebony, and we are having a relaunch, and we're going to be talking more about that. We have some great video we took with the Congressional Black Caucus members that we're going to release later on today. So yes, Stacey, we have to balance all of the negative, serious, death-willing news from police brutality across America. We have to balance that with our striving for excellence and our history and our genealogy. We are an African people, and we should be proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us bring on Nika Smith to talk about African genealogy. Good morning, Nika Smith.
Good morning. How are you all?
Good morning. Welcome to the Black Press of America.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Nika, it is exciting to have you. Can you explain to our audience what exactly do you do with African Ancestry?
Well, I mean, it depends on the day. Some days it is, tracking down some of the stuff that you all are talking about. The Black Press has been integral in the documentation of Black people across the world. And I think sometimes one of the underutilized sources in genealogy and family history is the Black paper. A lot of times when events would take place in our community, sometimes the white press would not come to our community, or they would report out on it in a particular, with a particular frame of mind. And you would get those nuggets and jewels and kind of untold parts of the story within the Black press. And so sometimes if I'm working with someone and they're trying to research an incident, like maybe even the equivalent of what happened with those young men in Orlando, where they were riding a bike through a town or through a city and they were detained or something happened, the press, and particularly the Black press, would be one of the first places that I would look to see how it was documented at the time. Because we've got, the oral history of the folks that were alive at that time, if those folks are still living, and if that story has been passed down. Then we have the records from newspapers that may talk about that experience or that situation. And then we also may have things like maybe if the confrontation did not end so favorably and the person died, then there would be a death certificate. Then there would be a funeral program. Then there would be a burial record. And you see with just that one incident, we covered 3 or 4 different record sets that you would utilize in genealogy. And that's just in more recent times.
Yeah, so it's obviously a lot of research involved, and it's good to hear that among that is the Black press, because for 194 years, right, we've been telling the story of Black America. So where else do you look for information to put it all together, Nika?
Sure. So you can start on the site like Ancestry. You could go to ancestry.com/Black history and put in the details that you know about your family, first names, last names, maybe grandparents, maybe aunts and uncles, people that are familiar with, and look at the record sets. I mean, they vary from everything like the U.S. Census to yearbooks to newspapers that I just mentioned, vital records, for pretty much every state in the country as well. You got to remember, Ancestry is worldwide, so it's not even just the U.S. So if you have ties to the Caribbean, you can look for information on your ancestors there, as well as other places in the world. There's also family history books that are on there, World War I draft cards, World War II draft cards, where you get to see things like the signature of your ancestors, their height, their weight. One of my favorite parts, whether or not they were missing limbs or other things, they couldn't serve, because you may not have known that person. You might not have a photo of them. Of course, military records, even things like some of the newer things that have been refreshed on the site, such as U.S. probates and wills, which include the names of enslaved people, if they were part of an estate that, that a person either died without a will or with one, and that property, which unfortunately included us, would have to be documented on those probate inventories. And those are usually some of the first records that those of us that are researching formerly enslaved people are looking for, is to find our ancestors reflected on those wills. There's also things such as a new collection that Ancestry added, which documents enslaved people in the Danish West Indies, which would be the Virgin Islands. We also have the Freedmen's Bureau, which I feel is a collection that a lot of folks really need to dig into, especially considering the times that we're living in. The Freedmen's Bureau covered a very specific time span, really before and right after the Civil War. And it's a lot of times the first time you'll see our ancestors documented on paper as free people. And some of the just push and pull, challenge, chaos that you're seeing in the country right now, literally you can find similar stories like that within the Freedmen's Bureau, within those records that have been digitized and will be indexed for the first time fully on Ancestry coming soon.
Yeah, and Nika, what do you say to individuals, perhaps you've come across this, who are afraid to look into their history?
Well, that's the thing. Our existence here has been a challenge from the minute we stepped off of those ships. And even if we did not step off of those ships, if we at some point through our ancestors became free people of color, it's always been a challenge, right? We weren't even necessarily citizens of this country until we had the 14th Amendment in 1868, whether you were free or whether you were enslaved. And so when you're dealing with that, push and pull, when you're dealing with that challenge, it can be an emotional journey. It can be one that can be very fulfilling. It to me, it mirrors our life experience every day. I'm just thinking about what happened this week and how it literally has been an emotional roller coaster for a number of us. And that can be what you experience when you're researching your family history. And so I say be brave, because those folks lived so that you can be here to experience what you're experiencing right now, and to have the benefits and the foundation that you are living on. And sometimes you got to step away. Sometimes you got to take a break. Sometimes you might have to sit back and really think about some of the information that you've processed. But to me, in my experience, it is the absolute best way to learn about American history is through the lens of your own family history.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, Bobby Henry says he's mailing his test swabs today to AfricanAncestry.com. I'd like for you to jump in there too, as well, Dr. Chavis.
Well, thank you. And again, we want to thank Nika for her expertise and her commitment and dedication all these years, documenting the genealogy of our families and of our people. Nika, could you comment on about the importance of us writing our own history and not allowing others to misrepresent what our legacy, what our history has been, and what our future will be? I think that after you do your genealogy, I think every family should have a book or books, not one book, several books, volumes of books about the history of each family. Can you talk about the importance of the research leading to the publication and documentation of the glorious history, in spite of these how we have overcome these difficulties? And then I want to have another question about policing, but talk about first the importance of writing our own history.
Oh my gosh, that to me, I feel like beyond finding the names of your ancestors in the actual documents and sharing that information with your family, speaking from personal experience, I have completely seen the transformation in my own family once it was put into a book. And I say that because it's no longer this on the screen or on a page of a document that someone may not be able to decipher even the handwriting on that. I mean, we have to even talk about that, how a lot of folks can't even read, cursive writing anymore. When you distill the oral history, the paper documentation, the even the genetic information that you might find, when you put all those things together in a book and you create the story of your family and you rewrite the story of your family from being, oh, well, I think we were enslaved, to, no, here's the person who enslaved us. Here's the value they associated with us. Here's how we emerged from that institution, or here's when we were freed. Here's who freed us. It becomes tangible in a way that you just cannot get. And you just can't rely on someone to tell your story. You can't do that. And having that book is, in my family, it's become a yearbook almost. Folks in my family have become so kind of trained, right? If they encounter anyone with our family surname, which is pretty distinctive, they're flipping to the index like, let me see which page they're on, and even beyond that, even if it's not a book, print a tree. One of the more recent reunions we had prior to the pandemic, we got the family tree printed. And the first one that we started with was only about maybe 4 feet. The one we had printed was more than 50, because that's how much access to records has shifted since that first one was created. And so you are the professor of your family when you start to do this research. It does not require a degree. It does not require someone giving you, knighting you on the shoulders and saying, yes, I give you permission. Take that permission, take your own, just push and nudge to be the person who is the architect of the study of your family, and change the trajectory of it by sharing the narratives and the history of people whose names you may have not even known, so that going forward, they're no longer unknown.
Absolutely. That's great. And I'm just thinking about the current events of police brutality and policing. We need to do a book on the genealogy of policing, the etymology of policing, because policing first started as slave catchers. They actually had badges. That's what was on the badge, slave catchers. That's how policing started in America. And I think that to a certain extent in 2021, they're still, quote unquote, slave catching, racial profiling. That's what happened to the 2 young brothers in Orlando, Florida, riding a bicycle. They're presumed guilty until proven innocent. They're presumed criminal until proven innocent. And in many cases, this can wind up being deadly. If those 2 young brothers hadn't got off their bikes and laid on the sidewalk, they could have also been fatally wounded by the police that were trying to catch them. So can you talk again about in your research how you've seen the role of police, not just in the last 8 years or 10 years, but it's going on for hundreds of years?
Yes, you're absolutely correct, especially when you look at, the laws that around apprehending fugitive slaves. Like it literally is codified within the law. And then we also can't necessarily make it just about the enslaved. We have to also talk about how free people of color were also over policed as well.
Yes.
There's this whole thought process that, oh well, my folks were free, like everything was fine, and we kind of have a leg up. And honestly, that we really need to change that thought process in our community. You have to think about places where folks were being had to report. Like even in Mississippi, if you were free and you lived in Mississippi, you had to go report to the police board. Yes,
Wow.
back then you had to go in and report yearly. And if you didn't go report, they would say that you did not pretty much have a license to live in that community. You also think about, how do we have registers or certificates of freedom? It almost operates like a driver's license or an ID for us now, where you would have to go and you can go back and read these things, like in places like Maryland, where, it's got your first and last name, your height, your complexion, whether you have any distinguishing marks, and then a person would have to come in and vouch for you being free. So that again it's not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is, there was no process that was similar to that for other people who were free who did not have African ancestry in this country. It just didn't exist.
Very, very important point. Stacy and Nika, on the Chavis Chronicles, we had uh, people who researched Benjamin Banneker. He was one of the architects of the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. And this is way before the Civil War. This when there were a lot of free, quote unquote, free blacks in Maryland. But they put the property in his name because they know that even though he was an architect, helped design the Capitol, he could also be caught by slave catchers. I mean, it was just crazy. And I think that is still what's going on. So fundamentally, it's just not the structure of the police that needs to be changed, but the culture of the police needs to be changed. The purpose of the police needs to be changed. Until we do all of that, we're going to still have these tragedies that unfortunately we have to report so much in the black press of America.
Yeah, I think you're correct. And I would also add, especially when we're talking about DC, we're right on the cusp of hopefully it becoming a state, which it should have been a long time ago. You have to also consider, that people are arguing, well, the founders didn't intend for DC to become a state. The founders didn't intend for us to be sitting here talking about this right now. They didn't intend for women to vote, right? And so you have to constantly, we've been going through revisions in our country since it started. If the Constitution and everything, and even the system of policing was exactly perfect and did not require revisions, then why are we gone back and changed laws over time? So every system needs to constantly be revised and looked at and made more equitable for everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, we agree.
One of our viewers, Annette Phillips, says a police in Houston, Texas, a police officer there, when they go into the black community, they do call it hunting. She says. So it goes along with the point that you guys are making. Here's a question we are getting from our producer too. And Chance, it says, if police have access to genetic testing kits, do we know if police have access to the genetic testing kits?
Yeah, so I can say for certain at Ancestry, it's not a free for all where, if Sergeant Benjamin Chavis decided he wanted to come in and use the system, he could just log in and get access. That's not how it works. At Ancestry, a court order is required to access any of our systems because our customers are the most important thing and their privacy is the most important thing. But there are services that exist where people can extract their data from the various testing companies and upload them to a third-party site. And with sites like that, the law enforcement does have access to those sites. There are other systems as well that openly encourage that, that they openly state that law enforcement does have access to them. And that is a concern in our community because, again, we're operating from a place where we're being over policed and overly surveillanced, right? Not even so much overly policed, openly surveillance. And so, of course, that's a concern. And so, I think the best thing is do what you feel comfortable with. If something doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. Right. And then also read through the terms of service that we provide to be clear on what you're participating in and making sure that you're clear on that. And then as well, if you test and you decide that you want to change your mind, then there's always recourse to do that, to remove, information too as well. So again, don't ever, I mean, this is just in life. Don't ever do anything that you don't feel comfortable in your gut about. But especially considering more current news around that, of course, there's going to be a concern in our community. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because I know a lot of African Americans in particular are, they're kind of sketchy about those type of things, and rightfully so. Real quick, Nika, can you tell us where can we see Black Pro Gen Live, which is your web show that focuses on people of color, genealogy, and family history?
Right. So you can check that out on YouTube. On the Who is Nika Smith YouTube channel, there are more than 130 episodes of the show covering a wide variety of topics that are specific to African American genealogy. And additionally, this week, we just launched a new series on Ancestry's Instagram channel called Questions and Ancestors, Black Family History, where I'll be talking to leaders in our community about their family history, sharing nuggets and jewels and things that we have extracted from searching through Ancestry products. The first guest I had was Elaine Welteroth from The Talk, former editor of Teen Vogue, and she got to learn some incredible names in her family that she did not know beforehand. And so there's a couple of different places you can check me out and find more information and continue to get what you need to fill in your family history. Also have to say, if you want to get started, great way to do so is ancestry.com/Black history.
Fantastic. Nika Smith. Dr. Chavis, a quick closing thought from you.
Well, we want to stay in touch with Nika. On behalf of the Black press, I can think of 230 books that need to be written by each of our publishers about their families, about their businesses. Some of our publications, many of our publications, over 100 years old. Some are 70 years old, 60 years old, 50 years old, etc. And those books need to be written, and we need your help with the research. So we're going to be back in touch with you. And thank you for giving this invaluable information out to our audience this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nika. And don't forget to register for the upcoming NNPA virtual convention, which is free to register. It takes place from June 23rd to June 26th, but register now at www.virtualnnpa2021.com. Once again, it's www.virtualnnpa2021.com. For more national news and interviews that highlight Black America, watch the Chavis Chronicles on PBS TV and PBS World this Sunday and every Sunday, hosted by our own Dr. Ben Chavis. Check your local listings. Let it be known, it is certain in any case that ignorance, allied with power, is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Everyone be safe, wear a mask, social distance, and we will see you on Monday.